This podcast is brought to you by Business Radio, powered by Wharton, originally airing on SiriusXM.
From the campus of the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, this is In the Workplace on Business Radio, powered by the Wharton School. Here are Professor Peter Cappelli and Dan O'Mara.
Hey folks, welcome back. You're In the Workplace. I'm Peter Cappelli.
I'm Dan O'Mara.
I'm a professor of management here at the Wharton School.
And I'm an attorney at Ogletree Deacons in Philadelphia and adjunct faculty here at the Wharton School.
Now, Dan, when was the last time you listened carefully to our introduction? Because one of the things I just noticed, listening carefully, is it says, this is In the Workplace. Sort of a little drama building there. And then it says, Professor Peter Cappelli and Dan O'Mara.
Yeah.
So we should try to pump up the Dan O'Mara thing. How about a title
I'm
for
okay
Dan?
with that.
Counselor Dan O'Mara? What do you think? Does anybody call you counselor?
No.
I call people counselors because that's what people used to call my father. But that was in the old days when they talked like that. So, of course, fabulous show today, and welcoming back Dan and me, because I forgot where we were last week. Oh, I was in Miami.
You were somewhere.
Yes. Starting out, we're going to talk about what's in the news with Debbie Bolla. Debbie is the editorial director and editor-in-chief of HRO Today magazine, and every month, Debbie comes on and tells us what's in the news. So, Debbie, where are you today?
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Where are you? Make up something. Tell us it's someplace exotic.
Oh, New Jersey's always exotic. I'm very loyal to my hometown of West Orange, so I'm calling in from New Jersey.
Which exit?
Same as last time, 140.
140, all right.
Yeah.
There we go.
Some road work on it, so it's pretty memorable if you ever get stuck over there.
There you go. So, Debbie, let's talk about what's in the news this week. I see a list of things you'd like to touch on, but where would you like to begin?
Well, our September issue just dropped today, and it's one of my favorite seasons, the fall, and we're hitting up one of my favorite holidays next month, Halloween.
Okay.
So it's no coincidence that we're talking about ghosting
in
our September issue. Well, It's actually because it's our talent issue. And I remember, Peter, the first couple emails I got about ghosting in the workforce, and I was like, is this really happening? Is this just a catchy, fun phrase that people are using? But it actually is happening, and it's now become quite a detriment to HR in some instances because the talent market is so tight. And from our story, we found that 66% of U.S. managers report being ghosted by candidates.
So, Debbie, can you...
what being ghosted
Yes,
is?
just what I was going to ask you. Tell us what it means.
It means shutting off communication with no warning at all. And in the terms of the workforce is you don't show up for an interview, you don't reply to an email, you don't show up for your first day of work.
Ooh, that's a really good one. So ghosting is going as far as people accepting jobs and then just not showing up.
Showing up. And that's most likely the case where they found a better offer and just didn't have the consideration to tell the employer.
Of course, let's be clear, employers have been doing this to employees all the time.
For years.
Right.
So part of the story is talking about how the tables have turned. And this has really been on some of the hiring manager recruiting side where it's just too many emails coming through, can't get back to all the candidates.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when I looked for jobs, you would call and check in, see what the status is. And that has changed a lot. I actually think recruiters and HR leaders have done a much better job of staying in contact with candidates.
And I guess Debbie, when you're talking to these folks about it, do they have a sense of what drives this? I mean, why it happened? Is it anonymity that you don't?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a couple factors at play, and some of it is that new communication. And Carrie Hidler, CHRO of ProSite Specialty Insurance, really had an interesting phrase saying that job candidates are hyper-connected while being disconnected.
Ooh.
So technology allows a lot of different means of communication, and you kind of can hide behind the screen, so to speak, through email, texting, instant messaging. So you're not really building a personal one-on-one connection with people as much as you used to. You know, you hear about younger generations texting with their friends or instead of calling them, or they're online chatting. It's just a different way of socialization, and it's kind of interceded into the workforce.
Any of this have to do with the fact that people apply to so many jobs now and the employers get so many applicants on both sides? That's why they're not doing it?
Absolutely. High volume of jobs is definitely, application is driving that. And that's, there's research in the story that says 53% of job seekers in 2018 applied between 21 and 60 jobs. That's a lot of jobs.
It's a lot of jobs, yeah. What else is in the news this month? What are you looking at?
Well, that kind of plays nicely into the other story I wanted to talk about. And it's just, like we said, is providing that positive candidate experience.
Okay.
And within that is the employer brand and communicating your employer brand to potential employees. So we offered some advice to our readers on how to do that.
Okay. The employer brand, and just remind folks, what does that mean?
It means what employees can expect while working for your organization, your missions, your values, your culture. So it's all of that. If you were to have a solid employer brand, a person, not even a candidate, would know something about your organization, something that you believe in, and you are promoting it and making it easy to understand through some of your channels.
What's the difference between that and what we used to call the employee value proposition, which is here's what's important to know about our job, different than other people?
They're very aligned now. Okay. Employer brand and EVP.
Okay. So what kind of advice do you give people about developing an employer brand and making it more attractive?
Right, sure. So, it's especially important for consumer organizations because candidates can also be customers. So we talked to Kathy Scarlett, who's the vice president of TA for BMO's financial group. And she said that when they looked at it, they wanted to base it on their employee promise, why work at BMO. So they took that brand and executed it through a variety of channels, including mainly the starting point, which nowadays is the career site. So when they have candidates come onto the career sites, it's very engaging. You can use it on your mobile phone or your mobile device. And there's different employee testimonials, career stories, videos that candidates who may have not known much about the organization prior to can learn a lot about it and get excited about applying. So it's creating that positive candidate experience by understanding more about the organization.
So let me ask you a question, and that is, when you read these employer branding statements, do they all kind of sound the same?
I think there are certain terminology that can be similar in employer brands and organizational missions. But I feel like when you have interactive qualities to your website where you're seeing what the employees are saying about the organization, that can be a real differentiator. It's not just like the mission
it's what you show them.
Bringing it to life.
It's what you show them.
Also showing them the benefits and some of the perks. People want to hear about that nowadays as well.
There were some academic studies a while ago of company mission statements. And there were two conclusions that struck me about them. One was they all say pretty much the same thing. And the second, they don't actually believe them. That's the other thing. They don't really matter very much. They're just these kind of statements. Have you ever seen anything where anybody checked to see whether these employer brand statements reflected the reality of what the place was like?
Well, I think that's how some organizations who are ahead of their brand are doing now. They're doing more than just having a very flat statement about what the organization believes in, and they show it. So if you're going to go to a website, and let's say corporate responsibility is really important to you and your beliefs and the reputation of an employer, and you're doing some research, you're going to go on a website and look, their corporate responsibility or CSR initiatives. And then if you click through and you just see a statement, you might be uninspired. It may seem kind of just obligatory. But if you go in and you see videos of a day where employees got together and worked for Habitat for Humanity, you really see it in action. I think it makes it more concrete. So I think there are different ways that organizations can really showcase it. And as a savvy job seeker, you're going to think it really is part of it. And then during the interview process, you can ask.
So it's the evidence that backs it up that is the story, not the statements per se, because they're kind of, pretty generic.
They can be, sure.
It would be an interesting study to do, to look to see what the statements say and then check to see what people on Glassdoor say about the company and see how they match up. That would be interesting to see how...
Certainly can. Savvy employees or job seekers certainly will cross-reference if they're really thinking about making a huge move in their careers. Because Glassdoor does allow employees, current and former, to be very honest about their experiences. And, if that's really important to you, you can do some additional research. I think it's also really interesting how social media plays a role in employer brand and just how creative some organizations are getting to communicate to maybe some younger job seekers using hashtags about like what it's like to work here and showing pictures of employees in different settings. I see it a lot on Twitter as well with Employee Appreciation Day, and you can see people in action. I think it helps convey what it's really like to work for an organization.
Deb, you got a last one before we let you go?
We just did a little more research on this social media and employer brand. And one thing, this was our own research from HRO Today and Allegis Global Solutions, was kind of an interesting thing is the research found that people aren't always communicating with what they're finding on social media. So it found that 80% are using it to promote their employer brand, like I talked about, showing pictures of employees, sharing company culture, but they're not always communicating with prospects about it. Okay. So it's just encouraging HR and TA leaders to go ahead and do that follow-up. Take advantage of what you're promoting. Because only about 28% in this study are using it to its full capability. Yep. Sometimes it's just a way to advertise, but if you see comments or likes, that's where you really take it to the next level and you can engage with a user. Maybe answering questions, exchanging information, becoming LinkedIn. That's really going to get you an engaged candidate.
Okay, very cool. Debbie, thanks very much for being with us. Debbie is the editor at HRO Today magazine. As I understand it, Debbie, you can go to the website and click on this podcast version of what we just talked about and listen to it there.
Yep, we are hosting the podcast, and I promise I'll never ghost you guys.
Very nice, because we're on repeat. Just press the button, and there we are. Thanks, Debbie. We're going to take a break now and come back in just a couple minutes, and we're going to talk about what it's like to work at some interesting companies, well-known companies, call centers, and that kind of stuff. So hang in there. We'll be right back with you.
For more insight from Business Radio, please visit businessradio.wharton.upenn.edu.